Thank you, everybody, for bearing with me this morning. This is my first time being made, apparently a solo host. So, like I said, good morning. Thank you all for joining this is like our third or fourth volunteer town hall here. This was a new initiative this year to really give a forum and an opportunity for the volunteers to get together, ask questions, go over upcoming things, and really just to better serve all of you. So without further ado, if you've been on here before, you know, we like to start off with just some announcements and upcoming events. So I have plenty of RDs on this town hall, so they're all familiar with the regional meetings that are coming up. If you're not familiar already, we are going to obviously be doing virtual regional meetings in lieu of regional meetings that would typically take place at PBLI in person. We'll miss seeing everybody, you know, and your smiling faces, of course, but hopefully you are able to join. The dates are listed on here for all of the various regions. Of course, no surprise, you can register for your regional meeting in the My AKSI community. Under the events tab, you should be able to see the regional meeting that corresponds with the region that you volunteer in. If for whatever reason you cannot see the regional meeting, I'm gonna throw Jason under the bus and say that reach out to Jason and he'll make sure that you get aligned to the correct regional meeting. The RDs are going to be going through pretty similar topics in all of their regional meetings, including state of the region, meeting the regional management teams. So obviously that's a great opportunity for you guys as volunteers to get mentioned if you're newer to the regional management team, or just, you know, sometimes the students need a good refresher of who's who in the region. And then there'll be information about convention. And again, it's an opportunity for the chapters to bring up legislation or nominations for convention. So very similar to PBLI regional meetings, just virtual like everything else this year. As far as other due dates and events coming up, nothing really on here should be much of a surprise. A lot of the due dates are related to the chapter success plans, Bridge to Brotherhood, you know, our standard due dates and whatnot. So definitely take a look. One thing I will draw attention to for you to mention to your students, the scholarship applications and the academy applications due at the end of February. Those, you know, obviously will come up quick, especially as the students are starting their spring semesters and things are busy. Just making sure that that's on their radar so they don't miss those opportunities. And then as far as events go, we have our Institute of Business Leaders. So that's coming up in April. We will have a graduating seniors week, including orientation and the graduating senior rituals, the academy, and then obviously convention. And then just keep an eye on the community, because I'm sure, you know, other things as they come up will be posted on there. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts about events, due dates, regional meetings, anything like that before I kind of just go over, have like more open discussion?
I just wanted to add, because on the regional meetings, the alumni chapters will have a regional meeting as well. Jessica and I were just waiting for all the other regional meetings, since so many alumni belong or want to be part of their region's regional meeting before we put our regional meeting in place. So now that we have all those dates, and we will be sending out a newsletter to all the alumni chapter officers with all of that information.
Perfect. Oh, and then one thing I forgot to mention, my coffee just poured, it hasn't kicked in yet, is that as far as due dates, you will see there's no SWOT analysis listed. So that, if you haven't heard, that was suspended for this year, just with everything going on. So you will not see that on our list of due dates for the students. Now I really just wanted to take this opportunity to let you guys ask any other questions, anything else that's on your mind that you wanted to go over. Obviously, we have a lot of management team members. We have Thomas and Jackie on here. We have Brian and Jason, if there's anything that, you know, Jason's like, not it, aligns to the staff. So now's an opportunity to either ask questions specifically to the leaders on this call, or if there's anything you want to talk about with each other. I'll let you guys give me anything first. I do have a couple of prompts, shall I say, that came up. If you've been to the town halls before, there's usually a survey that's sent out at the end, and I've gotten a couple of questions back on that I will throw out to the group, but otherwise I'll first see if there's anything you guys want to discuss. Nobody else's coffee is kicked in yet either.
Good morning, this is Elizabeth. I have a quick question, just in case. I'm new to this role as SD, but I know I was going to follow with my RD as well, but I just wanted to know, what is our backup plan regarding convention if for whatever reason they tell us no, that we can't go? So as we promote and tell the students about convention and getting them in place and situated, should they ask what's the backup? Do we have what we're going to say as an org?
Thomas, do you want to take that one, or Jason? I don't think I see Wendy.
So the quick and easy answer is Wendy Wendroff, convention chair, is going to give an update during the closing session today. So I would just take notes then. But the standard kind of response is, we're monitoring the global pandemic crisis, weighing all of our options, and then we'll be making a decision later this spring. But right now we're planning as if it will happen in person. But again, we don't know what the future holds, right? So that's kind of where we're at. But Wendy's going to give an update on that later today.
Awesome, thank you.
If only you had that crystal ball.
I have kind of a follow-up question to that. So I was thinking the same thing about virtual or in-person convention. If it does end up being virtual, and maybe this will be discussed in the update today, will there be some sort of refund or price reduction for those of us who have paid on the assumption that it was going to be in person?
Are you talking about the convention booster club, Corey?
I mean, I paid my $305 already. So, at that point, I was under the impression this would be in person. If it's not in person, then, am I going to get something back or something reduced as a result of it?
Yes. For the convention booster club, absolutely. We would look at, refunding that or somehow working with with those individuals. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Corey, the convention booster club is a great idea and great plan, and we should have done it many years ago. And then we launched it this past year, and then 2 weeks later we had a global pandemic. So we will certainly, obviously, if it's not in person, those people that signed up for the convention booster club would get all of it back generally. I mean, so.
Anyone else? Questions? Or I can throw out right now one of the ones that came in, which I think will be good for this group. One of the questions that I got, which was really interesting, was, as a seasoned volunteer, how do you prevent things from getting stale? And I was wondering if anybody had thoughts on that.
Is that like a person, like for us personally or for the chapters?
It didn't specify because it was an anonymous question, so I think it could go either way. My guess is it probably means mostly for you, because at least with students, there's turnover every 2 to 4 years, depending on when they come into the chapter. But I know we have a lot of longstanding volunteers on here, so could have been one of you to submit it. I don't know. Let's assume it was. Let's help out our fellow brother. And what do you guys think?
I can't speak for everybody else. I know that for some people, what keeps it from getting stale is different positions. I've seen people jump up from CA to RD and then from RD back to CA when they felt like they needed to step back for a little bit. I feel personally, I mean, I've been an SD now for something like 5-6 years running. And the truth is, I'm comfortable here. There's no other way to say it. I mean, this works out great for my schedule. This works out great for my location. This works out great for my lifestyle. So, and I've grown a kind of familiarity with the different chapters and their mentalities and the students. So, I mean, I could be an exception here because, it didn't get stale for me. I just kind of found my niche and stuck with it.
All right, I
Yeah.
have some feedback. I must be energizing buddy, okay? Looking at every individual chapter on org, you have to really know your audience. And in order to not keep it stale, one, you got to stay abreast on, like he was sharing, each chapter and the dynamics and how it's changing, right? And find out what their interest or their passion is. So therefore you can coach your CAs and how to make sure the students are bringing out the best in what they're doing. So I know one of the things that I was thinking of doing as I reach out to my CAs is to find out some of the things, when we look at some of the feedback you get from your chapters, the things that really initiate them, and see how you can recognize them, right? So when they see that you actually care and it's showing that, okay, wow, I really do have support in this, then I will put a little fire up under their tails, right? To make them, as they say, ignite AK side, but also recognize what's your why. And this is not a lazy way of doing it. We can still have fun, whether virtual, in person, whatever the case may be. You have to decide how you want to initiate that. But it's your CAs that you have to coach along to do it, to make sure when they move on to a corporate setting that they change their mindset as well, right? So keeping a pulse on it. So coaching your CAs and how to keep a pulse on what their chapters really enjoy doing. Because each chapter is going to change semester by semester. Nothing's going to stay the same because personalities are different and everyone brings a different perspective to the table. But that's just me. I know I can be 0 to 100 hype, right? Always energized, so it depends on your style too, but it's all about your chapters too and your CAs.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if we're talking about it from a personal standpoint, there is certainly no shortage of special projects and things that you can take on beyond your current role, right? Just because you're a chapter advisor doesn't mean that's all you have to do. Reach out to your RD, reach out to the regional managers and see if there's other things that are being worked on out there that might be of interest to you, and your help would be welcomed, I'm sure.
Yeah, if I can add to that too, is AK Psi, like Josh was saying, has a plethora of different ways to volunteer, but not just to volunteer, to stay involved. And the reason why I'm going to say that, just in case, depending where this person's mind was at, is you don't have to stay volunteering to stay involved within the organization or to stay active and participate. A lot of times volunteers feel that, oh my gosh, but if I stop volunteering, or if I'm no longer a CA or an SD, like I'm not in the know, or they go through FOMO, like fear of missing out, because they won't see their friends. And I'm like, nothing is stopping you from a regular alumni to go to these events, or to join task forces, or like you said, some of the other things that we have going on as well. So if you've reached that point that you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for a few years, maybe you want that break. The break doesn't necessarily have to be from AKSI completely. It might just be from that volunteer experience. And again, that's very personal to each individual, depending on what their motivators, drives are, where their life is at the moment, career, family situations, whatever the case may be. I just never want a volunteer to feel that they can't step away because they feel like they'll be disconnected or lost from the fraternity, because that's not the case whatsoever. You will still be connected to the fraternity, or in one way or another. And there's a lot of examples of that I've seen, how they still stay in the know, how they still come around, or eventually they come back. Because like I'm looking at Lindsay right now here, that worked for the staff, has done different things, and she comes back and forth as needed, but she's always stayed in the known, and she's always stayed knowing that she could come to an event or pop up in a PBLI if it was in San Francisco, or different things as needed. So just keep that in the back of your mind. For me personally, I agree with Joshua on this. I sort of give myself like a time limit per role, because in my head and the way I operate is also how I'm helping develop the future volunteers. So I don't like to stay in one role for too long, just to be able to give other people those opportunities as well. So that is my TED Talk. Thank you for coming.
Can I ask a little bit of a follow-up question to this situation? In addition to things getting stale, one thing I've been challenged with, I guess, in working with some people is I've noticed that some people who stay and volunteer for a long time seem to get more energy, more positive, they're more excited by what we're doing. And some people go the other direction. You know, people who are, I can't think of another word besides jaded, but for some reason want to continue volunteering. I don't know if any of you have experienced that. It's difficult to manage. Someone who kind of always assumes bad intentions instead of good, things like that. Does anyone have any advice for how to initiate a conversation when many conversations have been had?
Be patient. Be patient. Be very, very patient. Look, you know, a lot of you kind of know who came before me and everything, but there's definitely an element of that in there. And I think, you know why you volunteer, you know why your people volunteer, and just reminding them of those reasons and the other people that they're supporting and why that's important not to make that present to others. It's one thing to have conversations with your fellow volunteers that are at the same level. It's another thing when you're kind of feeding that energy elsewhere. So just coaching and reminding on those topics and just trying to be that positive energy where you can be. That's really all you can do. At least for me, that was my experience. So as far as my volunteers below me, a lot of times it's just a matter of changing up that role, giving them some other aspect or another project to work on. And a lot of times that other project will give them energy to do something else or give them something of interest that really is like they're passionate about.
Thanks.
My answer might not be, I don't know if it's what people want to hear, but I do think that sometimes, especially with a jaded volunteer, there is a difference between supporting, being there and listening to a brother than a volunteer that's influencing others and students. And there's a very big difference between that. And it's okay to listen to that brother, hear them out. Of course, that is what we're always here for. In Leah's case, who she's speaking with, like, I listen and listen and listen, but it's, you're a great brother and I will always be here for you. However, are you actually being effective in your role currently and what's going on? Because again, separation of brother, I'm going to support you versus you're not helping out your chapters any longer, or you're bringing that negativity to it, and having that clear-cut conversation with that individual as well, no matter how difficult it may be. What I love about the Berkman too is that it's helping you how to have that conversation, how to bring it forward to that individual if we know if they've taken it like where they're at. And I think we've all been there at some point, especially some of us seasoned ones. I've done something similar to what Leah has said. I have rearranged all the chapters underneath me, all the chapter advisors, to see if maybe a different chapter would help, or a combination or a co-CA for that individual, how that would be. I've done assessments on them and figured out for one or two of them that they just wanted to volunteer, and they thought the only way they could volunteer was in the regional management team aspect. And in reality, it was something completely different that they should have been doing. And it's going that extra 5% in that difficult conversation at times. But again, at the end of the day, please still support that brother. It's just the brother versus the role.
And to add to what Jackie just said, understanding, acknowledge, when you're listening, you acknowledge what they're saying, right? But whatever you do, understand that's their journey, and understanding how they got there, right? Because you can't change how people feel. You know what I'm saying? You can never change how the person has felt about a situation. So that may be deeply rooted, right? But once you hear it, just reflect when you're coaching the brother and just asking the questions. I hear your frustrations, your concerns. What do you think we can do better, right? Are they going to be a part of rearranging, changing, being a part of that change? Are they going to stay stagnant in that situation? Because at the end of the day, right, things happen. Nothing's always going to go the way you hope and desire it to be, right? We are all brothers with various backgrounds, personalities, understandings. You don't know what or why circumstances have happened. But acknowledge, okay, I'm sorry that happened. I recognize what you're saying. However, is it something they can learn from it? Were they a part of it? Are they going to work to change it? How is that communication being given? Because remember yesterday, if a person comes at you in a very sour way, you're going to receive it that way, right? And so you may add additional emotions and feelings attached to it, and then you talk to someone. It's just like I wouldn't say a cake, because right now I'm dieting and I really want a cake, right? So let's just say you're going in a situation and you hear it, but it keeps getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. It should stop with you. It shouldn't be. So let's say, Brianna, I come to you and I have a feeling, maybe it's a jacket Josh wore that I felt it should have been my jacket. I'm just making up something as we roll, right? And it doesn't look right on him. It should be better on me. He shouldn't have had it, whatever, narrative going behind it. It should start with you as a brother, right? And just say, you know what? I hear you, and give them things to think about, but let it stop there, because we can be the start of that change, right? Because the one thing we don't want to do is keep repeating it. Once it's said, it's dead, it's done. I understand, and keep it pushing. How are we going to change that? Because I may not know the backstory. You may not know the backstory why I'm pissed at Josh about that jacket. It may be because Jackie said something to me and I was upset and I wanted it, he bought it, and I was trying to get it. So I'm trying to get everybody to get pissed at Josh. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you control how that cycle continues going. Like Jackie said, we got to separate it, right? Right? The personal, professional, but then tie into, if we had this situation at work, because we're still a business fraternity. We're brothers, we're frat, but we still business, right? How would that play out? So they're either going to be a part of the solution or continue part of the problem. To be honest, we got enough of that. Because life's going to go on. AK side not going nowhere. At least as long as I'm breathing, it's not. So I hope that gave an addition to what Jackie was saying, because again, you can't, it's like changing the DNA. Can't nobody change your DNA, baby.
Yeah.
I can add to it by multiplying it, but I can't change that DNA. All righty, so let me get it.
I think sometimes people need to be given the opportunity or told that there's no shame in resignation. If somebody has been coached and they're so negative about everything AKSI or certain things AKSI or just in general, it's okay to step away for a time. Jackie talked about earlier, stepping away and coming back to either a different role, different region, different whatever. And also realizing that life changes for all of us, monthly, weekly, daily, lately. And our circumstances may not allow us to volunteer. And as well as don't forget that you have a great network. Everybody on this call, you've got the managed team, you've got other people on your RMT, you've got people in your professional network that can help you with coaching or talking to that person if there is a trend of negative responses or just a bad attitude. So
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
And I've taken something from one of the videos Thomas did, I think last year, and asking people, what do they want their legacy to be? Because if it's negativity, that's not why we started doing this. We did this because we wanted to have an impact on the students, because we had that same impact in our lives. And when you get into those conversations, if you've never read or gone through Crucial Conversation training, look into it. I've done it through church, I've done it through work, and it's really changed how I interact with people and go about having those exact conversations.
Thanks, Scott.
I wanted to share, sometimes we think we're gonna be received with open arms to our fraternity back. And I remember when I started, I got a little beat up. and plus I joined a chapter and when I got beat up, I didn't know if people wanted me around. Then I started in a chapter that really I was the odd guy out from a competing chapter. Then my chapters later on had racial issues, stolen money, drunk, weed, people fighting, you name it, right? Did I sign up for all that? The reality is you have to look in your heart and understand that you're meant to be here, but it's right. You have to come with the right attitude. I mean, you are the guys that have the experience, right? You're not the kids, right? I dress like a kid and I act like a kid, but I'm not a kid, right? I am the adult when I need to be, and I am the leader when I need to be. I step in when I see something is wrong. That's it. That's my role. And we do our business, and everything gets taken care of. Then we start having fun, right? Then we start enjoying the kumbaya, the stuff. But things need to get done, right? This is business. And then if we have to find ways to change things, we bring it up, right? In kindness. Like if I have an issue with Jason, Brian, or anybody, I just bring it up in a nice way. Hey, can you look into this, right? Can you help me? Thomas, right? Thomas, I need help. And if they don't hear me, then I keep saying it. I tell Jackie, I tell, whoever needs to be told. But we are here as the adults, right? As the ones with experience, and understand that we didn't sign up for everything to be easy. Easy is when I hang out with the alumni chapter, right? Then I have a few drinks, or when I hang out with you guys. But the work is work, right? So it's not all. We have to understand that when we cross the bridge, it's not about selfies. It's about hard work, right? And our legacy. So nothing. Just if you get stuck with something, just reach out to us, reach out to people with experience, and go for it. I mean, just you're not alone.
Thank you.
Awesome. I think there's been a lot of great feedback there. I'm glad we got that. Caffeine is going now. I see the wheels turning on the screen. I'm going to throw another one out to the group that I got in one of the survey responses. Tips for advising your home chapter. So whether you've been the direct CA for your home chapter, or maybe you've been an SD or an RD, above that, how do you handle that when maybe you have a more intimate knowledge of the chapter and their operations and what they do, or maybe you're a newer volunteer coming right out and being a volunteer with that chapter, and how do you manage that dynamic? So that was one of the questions that was posed.
So I've appreciated something Wendy's done in the Northwest, and it used to be something I completely disagreed with, but now, 10 plus years as a section director up here, I see it more and more. But having that separation where if you're going to be an advisor for your home chapter, you're waiting at least 4 years before you're doing that. Because when you first graduate, and I saw it time and time again with advisors, it's hard to separate that advising role from your friendships in there. And that kind of helps bias your decision making when you need to address things and help them succeed because you're so invested still. So I think that separation helps with the maturity. And then that 3 years down the road, you got a brand new group of students that you have a more clear direction, I think, with working with them.
I mean, I can appreciate that. I know that in my region, we try to do that, but we're also bereft of volunteers. So that's has not always been an option. I've had to take on volunteers for chapters that are still pretty fresh and with their own chapters just because I needed somebody there. So I'm not dismissing your advice. It's definitely the policy I try to adhere to, but I can't keep hard and fast to it. We simply just don't have enough volunteers in my area in my section to keep to that. So I do think it needs to pay attention to that when we have to take that option, what can we do? I don't have a good answer. I only know now after making God knows how many mistakes in DC before I finally learned my lesson in New York.
I would add to that, or just kind of talk about what you're saying, is one of the things that we've talked about in Area 4 is allowing CAs to be a co-CA at another chapter. So if you do have to bring somebody back that's from that chapter, either having them work with the CA from another chapter that's very different from their home chapter is helpful. I would also say, remember too, and like we can teach our new volunteers that every chapter goes through a life cycle, right? So there's ups, there's down, there's growth, there's organic growth. They make mistakes. And as you guys have already said, every 4 years, we have totally different students. And so taking all of that into effect, and on also teaching our students, we're here to develop everybody as volunteers as well as just people and in business as well, and learning to step back and say, all right, I know this chapter was my baby. I cared so much about it. I don't want anything to happen to it, but having to put that to the side and looking at it from a logical reasoning and say, okay, if I had nothing to do with this chapter, it was any chapter, how can I look at this, learn from this? And then also check in with my SD to make sure, like, hey, before I make this decision or before I say this, help me know if I'm like being too biased because this was my home chapter, things like that.
And I know that's not necessarily something like, I mean, I've seen numerous CAs that have come straight out of graduation that are at their chapter. And I think in those conversations, you really do have to coach them on kind of putting that separation there on their relationships. So maybe they're not going out every Friday, Saturday night with their friends from the chapter. You know, maybe they're doing some other things or finding other creative ways to spend time with them without all those kind of risk management concerns. Because it's really hard to tell people you've gone out with before, no, you can't do this. Or no, you really should think about this, because they know you better than that. So, you know, I think that's part of the thing too, is that we need to be realistic when we are talking to those people that get stuck with those locations. Now, the nice thing now is that we have the ability to be remote and people can be from different areas. You don't have to be at the meetings and all that. Like, I mean, God knows 10, 20 years ago, we were actually going to places and seeing people, but you don't have to do that as much. So I think that's a plus, that yes, we can be a little bit more flexible with who gets assigned where. But if you are a CA and you get stuck with your people, just keep in mind that sometimes, you know, the temporary distance in those relationships, if you're friends, you'll still be friends 10 years from now. But while they're in the chapter, maybe you just need to put that separation there until they graduate, and then you guys can have that time again.
Lisa, can you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, all that was written was tips for advising home chapter ? So I took that to mean, you know, what, I'm not sure if that meant specifically if you're the CA or, but I think it, you know, can extrapolate to SD, RD, whatever that may be.
So for whoever is the CA, I was the CA for my home chapter maybe a week after graduation, if that. I really, really enjoyed it, and that was my first volunteer role ever. There was so much that I learned from that experience. If you are seeing for your home chapter, in my experience, it was helpful to me because I already knew those brothers. I knew their communication style. So I knew, you know, if there was a president that was more responsive to text versus email, you know, I already had all their contact info and they already knew me to be a professional brother. So that knowing their communication style already, that was helpful. I instituted a weekly check-in with them, and I told them, hey, at some point, if you want to change it to bi-weekly, we can do that. And I had an Excel document, kind of like a project management spreadsheet, to keep them on track with tasks, because my home chapter didn't necessarily meet all the deadlines, and that was the goal that I had as the CA. So that was helpful. And I also always told the president during the check-ins, like, if at any point you need to bring in somebody else on e-board, a committee chair, you know, if you have questions on like some sort of event or something, like it's formal, and that committee chair or e-board member can speak better to that than you can, that's totally fine. Bring them to our meeting. Whoever you want to have at that meeting to make you feel more comfortable in that conversation, bring them.
At the end of the day, just keep in mind, it depends. It depends who your volunteers are. It depends the personality of the chapter. At the end of the day, you know, is it a mature, you know, as Diana stated, she was successful as a CA. It's all going to go back down to, are you making the right match? So, you know, there's no right or wrong. There's no black or white. It's really just, you need to know the chapter and you need to know your volunteers.
I would stay with the I would stay with the risk management. The risk management issues should be handled by a third party. I think it's easier to deal with that. I don't, you know, you don't want to be involved in that if you're a CA for that home chapter. And that's where the SDs can step in and help a lot, because I understand the passion that you have for your own chapter, and it's great to channel that passion. But sometimes you just, you know, you don't want to be involved in murky situations, right? So That's my only advice. When it's the helping with professional events or with membership and all this stuff, which is all positive, progressive, is good. But when it starts getting murky, and then the SD should also look into it every so often, because what happened is, some CAs might hide information, right? Because they're involved in a relationship with certain of the brothers. Might be their brother, their literal brother or sister, not a relationship, a love interest, but it happens as well. So you gotta be, as an SD, you gotta be careful, and then the RMT has to be careful that we put the right people in place and supervise them when that happens. But the CAs, I've had CAs from the home chapters, they've been amazing. And then we've had others that haven't been that good, and we changed them. So
also based on what he was just saying, y'all just made me think about something. We want to make sure, well, I'm pretty sure you already have this. So if I'm repeating something, please accept my apologies in advance. But we want people to truly have a desire to serve, right? So if they really want to volunteer, they will work with you and actually have that transparent conversation. If it's the right time, if it's not going to work, if they're overwhelmed, we need to have that conversation up front. And also, if for any reason, hindsight, if we don't have a lot of volunteers, and we recognize that now, as we see people coming through undergrad and we're explaining to them how we want them to stay connected and they're dedicated to give us more, then we need to make sure we engage them right then and there, right? So they're being groomed. They have an opportunity to shadow and follow and see what you're doing. The last thing we want is someone that's not passionate. I'm just doing it because I was told to do it. They need to be able to have the conversation. But as Whitney was saying, how do they view the person they're having a conversation with? So we as volunteers have been there a long time. Sometimes we need to check ourselves. I've learned so much over this duration of serving that it caused me to think, yeah, I can do that differently. Oh, that's a good point. Oh, okay, I can understand that person's perspective. But we as leaders also have to be open and not internalize it. Have I made a lot of mistakes? Absolutely. Have I pissed off people? Absolutely. You probably see a couple of brothers on the line, that, Elizabeth. But I'm humble enough to apologize too, right? And so we have to be that example that we are seeking to have as the next coworker. So are we really, when people have on that resume Alpha Kappa Psi, how do we contribute to that? Because we have some coworkers that you sometimes wonder, how did you get that job, right? So understand that the person that you're shadowing is also going to be that person and that coworker that you really want to say, why did you fire them, right? And now I'm sorry, I don't wish evil on nobody's jobs during the pandemic. But you see what I'm saying? So we have to start as doing a different look, a different view, a different lens, and be strategic when we're doing it. Because the last thing we want to do is somebody say, oh, I'm not feeling well, or this isn't working. We say, okay, bye. We don't need you no way. Oh, no. Okay, you know what? I understand. Take a step back. Let us know if it's anything else you want to help with. Keep in touch. We have to nurture that. They say rubbing elbows and kissing babies. We have to nurture that. So
Whitney,
let me be quiet.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Whitney, I don't want to throw you on the spot here, but you had some great comments in the chat. So I want to make sure everybody heard.
Okay, do you want me to repeat it out for them or just talk a little more about it?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to just comment and just give people a summary of what you wrote.
Basically, I said, it depends on how the chapter views that person. Like, for example, if they were the party person in the chapter, the one they knew who always got in the shenanigans, stuff like that, I don't think that could translate well into being a CA soon as they graduate, because there's people who they partied with, who helped them out with, and some other activities we won't get into, but I think you guys know the track I'm going. But I know it's one of our volunteers that we have now. Actually, her big is on the call. She's the co-CA for Stetson, and she was outgoing president, and she's doing really well. And I think as the RMT, we kind of talked kind of grooming her and she probably knew we were grooming her, but we were grooming her to be a volunteer because she was a great president for her chapter. So with her being co-CA with someone who was actually still the advisor when she was president, I think that's a good look. And I think eventually she'll be able to do the chapter by herself. But I think with her being outgoing president, that level of authority was already there. So the student brothers knew how she was and knew how she was going to treat them. So I think, like what I mentioned, that it all depends on how the chapter views them, because some people, the active brothers, won't be able to look differently at them. Because I know with my home chapter, when I was active, we've had some advisors or people who were volunteers used to come to, I'll say, events we had, and I'm just like, maybe you shouldn't be here, or maybe you need to leave past certain time. So it just depends on how people view you, and that's how they'll respect you or give you a little more benefit of doubt than some random stranger.
So this call has been recorded. Is it going to be shared with people outside volunteers? Because
No,
I want to share a comment.
This is just for people who register for the volunteer town hall, which I think is just limited to volunteers being able to do so. So yeah, students won't be able to access it.
Okay, so I'll share that. I had an issue. I brought somebody from UM to handle Psi Sigma, and it didn't work out. They hid a lot of information from the CAs. I had to bring somebody from the chapter to get some feel for what was happening. At the end of the day, what it helped me a lot was to stop the alumni from getting involved, which caused some risk management issues. It brought balance to the chapter. Then we had to retweak the model a little bit because the CA is spectacular. But then what happens is people get a little emotional. So we have to bring a little balance. That's where the co-leader, the co-advisor came into play to deal with the risk management issues, so that the emotion wouldn't be there in some cases. So it's not an easy model. We have to make tweaks here and there. But remember why we do this, right? We do it to improve the situation of our chapters. We're really serving others, right? It's that we have to take the emotion out in these cases. But I want to share that because it's it's not that easy, right? But we don't want to deflate the energy of the volunteers either. I want that. I need that, right?
I'm gonna hope the person. Oh.
Sorry about that. I'm actually commenting on that. So what hi, I'm Victoria from Xi Sigma, and I am actually that's my home chapter, but I'm coming back like 10 years, but I've been still very active in the alumni association, and through the grapevine, I'll still meet student brothers before I was a CA. So, when I was put in that situation as being the alumni, the chapter advisor, and going to the alumni association, it's kind of a weird situation in the sense that Psi Sigma's alumni, they're very active, for many, many years following graduation. So they're very intertwined into the goings on, if you will. They'll still go to chapter and stuff sometimes and be very active in chapter, and that can cause its own problems. So, reining that in was itself difficult, but having a co-CA now allows me to kind of have that, let me go ahead and check with Susie and I'll get back to you. So it's always like that pause, let me discuss it. And it also helps that Susie has, been around in a volunteer role a lot longer than I have. So she has that added perspective of, hold on, wait a minute. Because I think it's that when you're a newer volunteer, the instinct is to be like, you still have that student mindset almost, in the sense that everything is a catastrophe. Everything is this catastrophic event that I need to respond to right now. And it's this urgency. And while things are important, you need to be able to be that sounding board to kind of take a step back and have that, level head going into it. Like, okay, it's not the end of the world. So having a co-CA now has that added benefit, even if Susie doesn't always even need to get involved, or they go to her first or whatever. It's just so much of a relief in knowing that, this is being managed all around.
By the way, you're doing an amazing job. I'm so proud of you.
I'm going to hope the person who asked that question is either on the line or going to listen to the recording because there was some great feedback there. I do want to make sure that I give everybody like 5 or so minutes back to use the restroom, grab a drink of water, all of that before PAFAC. But is there anybody else that has a burning question they wanted to ask, something they wanted to bring up? Going once, going twice. Of course, like I said, those two prompts that I had thrown out came from the feedback form at the end of the town hall. So if there is anything that you didn't want to bring up specifically with everybody on here, you can always throw them on that survey or email me directly. We will not be having a volunteer town hall in February because you all should be going to your regional meetings. And the RDs will be very busy with that and the VPs and whatnot. But we will be back for March and then April, and then where did the year go? I'm not quite sure. So that being said, seeing nothing else, I am going to stop the recording.